that even be possible? You get a temporary. It's a beaver in the backyard, not the engraving.
Are you already recording? You want to start? We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Katie's doing some things.
Can we do Pledge of Allegiance?
Right now? You don't want to wait for Dawn?
She's on her way. It's 5:30. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let me just make sure we are. Yep, we're good to go.
Good to go? Okay. We have 0 attendees, which is that's strange. Usually there's at least 4 or 5 on. There's 1.
I have 1.
Okay.
Oh, it's populated.
All right. Just want to make sure. Okay. We'll open the select board meeting for May 11th and call to order. There's no changes to the agenda except for announcements. I'm going to move the select board announcements comments to the beginning because I would like to welcome our 2 new/returning select board members. Welcome, Brooke Moore and Mr. Matt. This is number 5 at 4 in a row. Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I loved the quote last night, and one of the medias was you were confirmed you were in your pajamas at 9 o'clock and Baker's Life. So welcome. Must have been a long day yesterday. Okay, Libby, announcements.
We've got 2 announcements. The select board is accepting applicants for the annual committee appointments. And there's a lot of information online about this, including the timeline and the applications and the process. So if people are interested in applying for a town committee, board, or commission, please check that website out. And the board is currently accepting applications to fill a vacant planning board seat. Applications are due at noon on May 27th, and review of those applications pursuant to the board's committee appointment policy will occur on, when will that occur?
June 22nd.
That's when they're going to review the applications?
That's when
And the
applicants will review their applications and the board will make the appointment.
Okay, and in between the 27th and then, is there?
We have 2 meetings in between, and at those meetings, the list of applicants and their applications will be posted in the board's agenda packet for the board and the public to view,
Okay.
pursuant to our committee appointment policy.
Do we say the names? Is that part of our policy at those meetings?
Yes, it'll be under announcements.
So that's just not all detailed here, but I think the point is that will happen in between May 27th and the appointment time, and the appointment is a joint appointment made by the board and the planning board, which will be made on June 22nd. And is that when all the other appointments are made?
Yes.
Any other? Is that all, Libby?
Yeah.
Any other select board comments? Announcements. Okay. No new business that I know of. The motion for approval of minutes, payroll warrants, and treasury warrants.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Yep. Those 3 pass 4-0. Pending contracts. Any questions for Libby or anything you want to go over, Libby?
I did not have anything to go over now.
Any questions or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Yep. All those in favor for approval of pending contracts?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries unanimously, 5-0. Consent items, gifts acceptance, R&L home, and a fire department. I do not have this up on my screen. Erica, does anybody have? We usually like to read who gifted.
Would you like me to do that?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the gift for RL and Home is $350 from Sister Ship Restaurant to purchase bedside tables for the residents. And for the fire department, it's a gift of $25 from Beverly Knapp to fund the SAFE grant initiatives led by the Fire Prevention Office.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that passes unanimously.
And I forgot to, with thanks.
Yeah, with a letter of thanks.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, Citizen Department Committee request. Finance Department request for approval to increase FY22 Airport Aviation Full Revolving Fund spending limit.
And we've
Mr.
got-
Turbot is here, I think, on that, and,
I am, yes.
yep, okay.
Eric, are you gonna put that up, or by chance?
Yep, give me 1 sec.
Thank you. Thanks, Erica. So what you have before you, members of the board, is a request for an approval to increase the fuel revolver cap from $4 million, what was authorized at the annual town meeting last year for fiscal 22, to a new limit of $9.5 million, which is the same limit that was just recently approved at the annual town meeting for fiscal 23. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53, E.5, the cap for revolving fund can be increased anytime during the fiscal year for which it was authorized, provided there's a vote in support from both the Finance Committee and the Select Board. I will let the Select Board know that the Finance Committee at a previous meeting has already approved this request for the airport to increase the cap. So we're asking for the same concurrence from the Select Board so that we can continue to pay the fuel bills through the end of the year.
Any questions for Brian?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries unanimously. In my quickness, I skipped over public comment. I apologize to that, everybody who was here waiting for that. Is there any public comment tonight that's for items not on the agenda? Nobody here. Any
Not seeing
attendees?
anything online.
Okay, sorry about that. I skipped over that. I don't see any digital hands or real hands raised. So we'll move back on. Next up is taxi owner. This is not the same item we had 2 or 3 weeks ago for the public hearing. That's coming up next week. This is a request for amendment for a taxi limousine charter tour vehicle regulations to remove requirements for a driver's license to have mass driver's license. For drivers to have mass driver's license. Is anybody here that wants to,
Conturgeon.
Ken, you want to give some background on it?
Ken Turgeon, I'm here requesting this. I think in my letter, I explained most of it and why we want to do this. We can't get enough drivers to show up if they're required to have the license. They don't want to change their license because their health insurance is tied to it in their state. They're only here for 30 days. The Ubers do not, they come from everywhere. They don't go by what they should be going by. I thought the chief might be here for some input, but I tried to get a hold of him earlier. He's out. So has everyone seen the letter? Any thoughts?
Any questions or comments between us or for Ken?
I think if we can help, we should try to.
Okay, Erica?
I will note that the regulations do have a clause in it that the drivers do have to know their way around the town of Nantucket. I don't know if somebody coming in for a month is going to be familiar with the roadways, but I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, most of them will use their GPS.
I was going to say that was probably written before GPS was available for everybody. I don't have a problem with this. I'll
Okay.
make a motion to approve.
If the board is so inclined, we will need to schedule a public hearing because this
Okay.
requires a regulation change. So we'll get right on that, but it won't be able to be at the same time as the rate hearing because of the
Right.
timing. But we'll get it
Yeah,
as soon as
okay.
possible.
And Erica, did you?
No, I was going to actually say there was a public hearing. So
Okay,
do we
so-
need a motion to schedule? a public
Motion
hearing?
to schedule the public hearing, please.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, Ken.
So there's going to be 2 public hearings. There'll be one next week for the
Rates.
rates and then another one for this, 3 or 4 weeks from now. Okay, on to public hearings. This is continued from April 13th, a utility petition for Verizon New England and Nantucket Electric Company for North Beach Street at Easton. And is there anybody here to speak on that?
I don't think we ever heard back from anybody on this, and the phone company, I think, basically referred it back to us, saying this generated from the prior Public Works Director, and no one really has too much background on that. So I think until we can do a little more research on this, we'd recommend that you close the hearing, take no action, and refer it to staff.
I have to recuse myself. I forgot about this.
Okay.
one. Thank you. I'll make a motion to close the public hearing, take no action, and refer it to staff. Want them all separate?
I'll
Close the
second that.
public hearing is one,
Okay.
and then the motion is the other one.
So we'll close the public hearing. So there's a motion on the floor to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll make a
Then-
motion to take no action and to refer it to staff.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're done with the public hearings.
Was that one where the neighbors wanted to talk with them? Was
Yeah,
it- Yeah.
we were hoping they would work it out.
They
by
would
the
work it
time-
out and nothing's happened between then and now.
I don't think we've heard anything, have we?
I mean, again, as Libby said, it was generated through the town
Yeah.
request. It wasn't a private request,
Mm-hmm.
so we just,
Yeah.
it's something that maybe we need to talk about with the abutters. I'm not sure.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, town managers report.
I've got too many things here. Okay, we're starting with the third quarter fiscal 22 airport budget report. Tom?
Thank you. Good evening. Congratulations, Matt. Once more. So I've got good news. If you look at the summary of the airport, our net earnings this year to date after the third period are about $10 million versus $5 million last year. Our revenue is up significantly, and most of that is attributed to fuel sales. You'll see in your report the numbers, but we also have seen an increase in passenger facility charges, rental income, a number of different areas. And again, it's all due to the recovery from the pandemic. In our expense side of the house, there's a couple of anomalies with regard to salary and wages, because last year and this year, we received CARES Act funding. So the good news is, even when you add that, though, the salaries did not go up significantly. So all in all, we're doing well, but I will caution you that in the fourth quarter, it's when we transfer a chunk of money out for the fuel that you just approved in the revolver increase. But as I said to Jason earlier, we get more money to buy the fuel so that we can make more money by selling the fuel. And it's in the notes here. Our fuel sales were up, I believe it was, they're up 45. No, that's expense. I'm sorry. They increased $4.3 million. So our overall, well, the employments are up 18%, and or the operations and employments are up 145%, but our fuel sales are up significantly too. And we're seeing a little bit of a let up in the commercial side. There's a challenge with regard to pilots, and you may have heard Cape Air is reducing their schedule. JetBlue is dropping some of their service. So we're going to see probably a little bit of a lightening in the revenue on the commercial side, but we see no let up on the corporate side. Our fuel sales for last month were higher than any previous year in the past 10 years or so. So I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Just a comment, when you look at putting the wages back in without the subsidy, it still looks pretty good.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is,
Yeah. Again, it's just a matter of how we
Right.
budget it. It's just a source of funding. So.
right.
Any questions or comments for Tom? Thank you. Thanks, Tom.
Water Company Director, Mark Willett, I think, is Mark on line?
I don't see him on or present. Maybe can Brian do it?
Brian,
Maybe?
can you? Give it a shot, Brian.
What
I
if
hadn't really prepared, but I can try if you would like. So as you know, revenue is down slightly compared for the last period. Water fees are down about 6%, and but late service fees were up about $5,000 over Q3 of 2021. We have already hit the revenue number for fiscal 22, so some of these small decreases are not necessarily overly concerning, but there's something that we would want to monitor with the water department on a go-forward basis, which we will as we move into the last quarter. Expenses are really right along where I would expect, and I think Mark would expect them to be, with about 75% of the allocation. So I'm not overly concerned with where their expenses are. The decrease is primarily, well, excluding debt service, they're down about 24% compared to the last quarter. So part of that decrease is obviously was, as noted here, is the change in the Barnstable County retirement when it was posted to their account and paid. But overall, I think the water company is doing very well, and Mark and I are in constant contact with regard to the budget and operations. So from my perspective, where I sit, I'm not extremely concerned about their operations. I think they're on a good trajectory for the remainder of the year.
So now we're going.
Just a quick comment. Looking at it, I think it's this and the sewer are both slightly down in usage, which kind of is sort of what the island feels like. There's not quite as many, it hasn't been as warm, and there's not quite as many people out on weekdays this year as there were last year at this time. And the weather's been pretty bad. So, you know, they're opening their houses, but they're not staying, or they're opening houses later. And some people aren't here sort of in COVID isolation, hiding from COVID. So it's a slightly different world. I think we're going back to, you know, pre-COVID. And that's what the airport numbers look like. That's what these numbers look like. So.
Any other thoughts? Comments? Okay. Thank you, Brian, for stepping in there.
Thank you.
Sewer department is next. David's on, right?
Yep.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I would have been there tonight, but I'm just getting over COVID, so I didn't figure you'd wanted me to share.
Thank you for not sharing.
Sewer department's doing pretty good. Our revenue was up about 17% over last year. Our income was up about 1%, about $9,000. The one thing you'll notice that it says the sewer permit revenue has decreased. That has a lot to do with the last few quarters, and then last year was all Shimo coming online. So now that almost all of Shimo has connected and permits have been issued, there is a slight decrease there. However, we're seeing it on the other side of a lot of other permitting going on. We constantly work with the assessor's office and Brian down at finance, and sewer privilege fee collection has gone very well this year. Our sewer capacity fees have nearly doubled this quarter over 21. And so we're doing, our revenue is doing very well. Operating expenses, we did have some slight decreases. Had to do a lot of Barnstable retirement numbers. We were able to do some very hard digging on trying to find chemicals and supplies at lower than what we were paying last year. So we did actually be able to bring down some of our numbers, some on our chemicals, which aren't back to capacity yet, but we saw a little bit of a turn. However, we did have a significant increase in our repairs and maintenance, but that has to do with we can't get supplies and materials, so we're having to repair a lot of equipment in-house and try to maintain stuff until we can get parts and pieces. We've had some quotes of up to 26 months to get pipe or parts for pumps and everything like that. So that number is up. Other than that, unless anyone has any questions,
I'm good.
No questions, Dave. Thank you.
Feel
to
better.
everyone. I'm on day 10, so I'm doing okay right now. So
Excellent. Good.
Thanks, Dave.
thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody who did the budget reports. Next, we have Natural Resources giving an update on maintenance dredging at Long Pond First Bridge Culvert. This is continued from a discussion that the board had generated by a citizen on April 13th. And Mr. Murphy has, Vince Murphy, our Coastal Resiliency Coordinator, has a pretty comprehensive report in your packet, and he's going to take us through it. Thanks, Vince.
Thanks, everyone. I know I've had volume issues here before. Got me okay?
Mhm.
Sweet. So you might remember, I think even, oh, by the way, Brooke, Matt, congratulations. I know, Brooke, you were here that night. I saw you here that first night. You might be familiar with it, but the question came up about access and the swimmability for herring species to get into the head of Long Pond from First Bridge. It's a culvert. So I went out last Tuesday week, the 2nd, and we did a whole bunch of transect surveys. So started at the head of the, right by the culvert, did transect surveys every 2 feet to measure the depth at 2-foot intervals, move along 10 feet, do another every 2-foot intervals. We did 11 of those. 9 until we hit enough deep water that we weren't concerned any longer. Then I did 2 more, where I just followed the main part of the channel and one kind of at the end or the start point of 2 other ones, so that I could understand pond profile, so that I could see the depth of the pond going in 100 feet. So in essence, what I was able to show, did everyone get a chance to skim this? Or okay, so the most interesting one to go look at, Eric, if you could show figure 10, it's about 5-6 pages down.
Tell me when I get close.
Yeah, there, next one, yeah.
This one?
So this one here, figure 10, I started right at the culvert, and then every 2 feet going up the line of the channel, I was able to measure the depth of the channel to get a pretty good profile. It starts off nice and deep, gets a little bit shallow, then gets deep again. So you can see that the minimum depth in this area was 14 inches. The average depth along the whole length of the main channel was 21 and a bit inches, 21.3. The point is, what's the swimmable depth for a herring? There's a handful of different herring species. There's about 200 different herring species in the North Atlantic. Most of them are about 2 inches. Some get up to about 3. But the US Fish and Wildlife Service, they have a metric for what the minimum depth for a channel for herring access is, and that's twice the body depth of a fish. So if normal herring is about 2 inches, that would be 4. Some of the biggest herring that we have around Nantucket that don't necessarily come in, but they're in the area, so why not, are about 3 inches. That would suggest that the minimum depth is 6 inches. But that's the federal one. The state has its own metric. That's just a standard straight 6 inches. No matter what the channel is, that must be 6 inches deep. At no point in the channel survey did I find anywhere that was under 6 inches. So I did find something interesting. Eric, if you could go to figure 4, it's on the next page, please.
4?
Yes, just down a page.
Okay.
So there is a swimmable channel, which is no problem. And there is a sandbar on the right-hand side that on the eastern bank that does have a sandbar in it, but most of that is over 4 inches. So that too is swimmable for fish. Most of it's in fact over 6 inches. I think the average depth of that was 7 to 9 inches. So still usable for fish. So one of the things that came from this is, you might see in the bottom, I've outlined a little red area of unstable bank. So once we saw that and how torn up that piece of ground was, and we saw that sediments were quite literally running from the road onto the bank and down the bank, picking up more material and contributing to that sandbar, we realized this is part of the problem. So naturally I got on to Linda Loring Nature Foundation, who own a good section of this, as well as the town of Nantucket, because we own the road corridor. And we said, well, what if we did some bank stabilization? And once I spoke to Dr. Sarah Boyce and put up the idea of what if we did just a bank stabilization project to ease the sediments going into the pond, they were all for that idea. I believe Sarah should be part of the meeting. I texted her just before to say that we were starting this.
She's on.
Excellent, thank you. So once I spoke to them, to Linda Laring, they were all for this. So I don't see an issue for herring here. I have to say this in really clear terms. There's no environmental reason, there's no good environmental reason to do any dredging in this area. So there is a good reason to do bank stabilization to prevent this sandbar getting any worse. I think that's about the best approach we can take in this area. I don't know if Mr. DaCosta is online.
He is not, but I was just texting with him, and he's aware of the meeting, but he was unable to participate tonight.
Okay, so that is what the easiest way I could give to look at this. Would it be possible to just give Sarah Trainer Boyce an opportunity just to comment on this, if possible, please?
Do you want to bring her in?
Hi, thank you. Thanks everybody for having me on, and I really appreciate Vince's report. We have just started doing some kind of investigation ourselves of this area and this part of the pond. And so it was really exciting to see the work that Vince had done in kind of a short period of time to really assess the depth at the low tide area. The one thing I will say, so last summer we started doing just some biological inventory of the pond at a very cursory level. So we went out with seine nets, just starting to see what's in the pond, not particularly looking for any certain species. And we did find herring and we did find eels. So we know that that area has been passable. It was in small numbers, but we really only did like 2 seine nettings throughout the course of the summer. So I can provide those data to Vince, and we are planning on doing some more of that with interns and volunteers this summer as well. So that was just some of the biological addition. But we at Linda Loring, we definitely want to partner with Natural Resources, and we'd love to work with the town to help stabilize that bank, reduce the, maybe look at it a little more in depth to see what needs to be done to reduce the flow of kind of sediment washing from the road, and see how to make it more stable in the short term.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, just a quick couple comments. If you were a fish, you would want it deeper. I've fished a couple times there, white perch, and when you can see them scooting by, but they're in the deepest parts of those, parts of the shallows. And when you're catching them at the low, the sort of the lower portions. It's also when you watch the birds that are feeding there, they are sitting right there and they're picking off the guys who are not near the bottom. So if you talk to the fish, they would like it deeper, I think. They probably will not be here, advocating for themselves. The other thing that Robbie brought up, one is if we increase the flow, that'll help on some of what we're trying to clean up out there, some of the flow. And I know we're still working on that. The other question you had that you guys were looking into was, he made a claim that the state would do a dredge permit relatively quickly and easily. Did they confirm that or no? Yeah, did you give them a call, Jeff?
I did.
Yeah.
So Jeff Carlson, Natural Resources Director. That limited permit also requires that all other permits be in place. So you would still need to go get an order of conditions from the Concom and any other applicable permits. And they're happy to do that if you stay with under that 110 cubic yards. But we'd still have to go through regular permitting.
But it's a little quicker than the normal would be with them. Am I correct guessing that or no?
Yes, it's a little quicker from their end,
Right.
but the rest of it would still be kind of normal timing.
Okay, thank you.
Any other thoughts, questions for Vince? So Vince, the recommendation is it is good as it is for now. You and as town, Natural Resources will work with Linda Loring on the bank stabilization project.
Correct. The other part of the recommendation was that we would also undertake regular monitoring to make sure that whatever works would still have a deep enough channel, but also we don't know if that sandbar is moving or what it's going to do, so we still have to monitor it. So further studies are obviously going to be needed. That's the other element of the recommendations. And I don't mean to back answer Selectman Fee, but birds need to eat too.
I know, that's all right. And it does move a little bit. The sand there does move around a bit.
Everybody good with this? So we're not there. So the seeking the permit for the under the 110 cubic yards is not going to happen, at least for right now, right?
That would be my recommendation.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Vince.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, next we have the Natural Resources Director and the Public Health Director giving an update on fertilizer regulations. So at the prior meeting on April 13th, there was some discussion about this, and there was a request from a member of the public from the Land Council who asked for an update about this. And so the three of us have talked a little bit about what that update should entail, and we thought it would be a good idea to wait until after town meeting so we could understand what happened with the home rule petition relating to the proposed ban on fertilizers. And I asked them also to come up with, an overview of enforcement and outreach, which had been a concern, and what they've been doing on that. And they're preparing some amendments to the regulations in advance of the home rule, whatever might happen on the home rule petition. So I think you guys are going to go over those.
I'm sorry?
Are you guys going to go over those?
Yes.
Potential amendments to be made before the home rule petition, whatever happens? Okay.
Correct. So just a really quick overview of the licensure program. So where we've been at is over the course of the last 10 years now, we have been using this BMP, the best management practices, and the regulation that was passed in 2012 before the state passed their law that would have preempted us to do it. What we're looking at, that regulation, though effective, relies on self-policing and self-reliance. Really, the honor code is really what it ends up being. So what we're looking at is more or less to do the amendments on that regulation that we have already sent to town council for review, and we have already received back. We will be, I'm just going to go ahead and jump the gun. We'll be posting it for the Board of Health meeting next week. So that they can do their approval before we send it to the NPEDC as to form. It's the same one we've already gone
Have legal
over.
review already?
Yes, it's the same one. I haven't thrown anything out, any changes to it. Yeah, we haven't altered it since town council already reviewed it. So if we can go to the next one, please. So as we go, we issued approximately 415 licenses. It says 414, but as we move forward, we add things. So as we go along, sorry, sorry about that. We did do a series of videos that we have posted, and we do the trainings live and in person as well as remotely. It's approximately a 45-minute video. It goes over soil testing, fertilizer application, calibration, and things like that. We are currently doing revisions to that, and we're having NCTV cutting and editing those into 5 specific little videos, including an introduction with little quizzes at the end of it to test for knowledge, rather than what we have now, which is just you view the video and you get your license. The current regulation is a 3-year license for $100. Erica, next. So as we've gone through, fertilizer inspections is actually the 3rd most inspections that we do each year. We do a little bit over 250 inspections on fertilizer each year. A lot of times it is a inspection of opportunity, whereas we're going on to do another inspection, or we receive a complaint. We see a fertilizer a truck out there, a landscaping truck. We check for the product. We check what is being spread. We check what the work is going to be.
We do have all these metrics that are being done. Unfortunately, it is hard to catch people as they do it. You know, it's one of those things that once they're on the private property, we can't cross the curtailment situation. So we do inspections as we see them. Most of the time, though, when you are visible from the public way, it's when you see a lot of compliance. So far, we've only issued the one ticket for something that was blatantly out of compliance. What we're also seeing is it's a patrolling. It's really a patrolling enforcement. The best way to patrol the best way to enforce the current regulations as is to have somebody out there and have their patrolling, because we don't get a lot of complaints. The last complaint we really received was 2 years ago, approximately, and it was on Easton Street when they were applying lime. They just happened to have the fertilizer in their truck, so that's how we got the inspection called.
Are they required to have the license? Is a licensed guy have to be there when they're applying?
Yes,
So when
the
you
license has to be present on site.
So when they're doing it, applying it, they do have to have that.
That's actually what the one ticket was.
Right.
The person was applying fertilizer without the license.
Right.
Next. Tag you in?
Sure. Easy before Roberto falls over. So some of the regulatory amendments and a little background on this. This is actually something that we had started back in 2018 and 2019 with the Fertilizer Advisory Committee, had gotten it to a point. Obviously, it had town council review, had the required come in for NPDDC. As it was moving forward, the health department got tied up with the pandemic, and it kind of stepped back a little bit, and that leads us to where we are today. So the focus on the potential regulatory amendments doesn't necessarily really speak to the application of nutrients specifically, because that's where you get tripped up in state law and where they try to prevent towns from regulating that independently. So we're really focusing on doing some additional reporting. So right now by state law, and then not as much locally, they're required to keep logs of what they're applying, where they're applying it, how much they're applying, or they should be doing that. But bringing that requirement into the local regulations, and for us to be able to request those records or even have those filed on a yearly basis to see what's going down and what they're reporting, to give us something to check against as well. To couple with that, to help with a little bit of a check and balance, to obviously try to, curtail any dishonest reporting, also trying to provide the ability for their stockpiles of product and fertilizer at their place of business to be inspected as part of a requirement of licensure, to say, we want to see what you have. We want to see that it's leaving, compared to your reports that if you said you started with 200 pounds and you applied 160 pounds, we should still see 40 pounds. Why is there only 10 pounds left on the lot? Where's the rest? And try to be able to track it that way. A little bit. One of the other things that we're proposing to doing is shorten the license term. So instead of having a specific 3-year license for $100, to help the companies that have a lot of movement in between workers from year to year, from time to time, where it's a very transient community where they hop around for whoever's paying the best and do things. They move around, and folks have invested in licenses, is to split the licenses up into 2 tiers, to have a company license that they have the kind of the parent license, and then they're able to license their individual applicators for a much reduced fee for just a single year. So instead of $100 for 3 years, the proposal is $25 for 1 year. So it's still a reasonable fee, but it gives everyone that year-to-year flexibility. And we think it's good because that also forces all of those companies to come in every year, show face at the Board of Health and Health Department, and have that interaction physically, as well as any classwork that's going on. And then the last thing that we always hear is trying to provide people the best opportunity to succeed when they're going to purchase products, is to bring forward partly something that's in the state regulations, but tweaked a little bit for here, but to have vendors mark products for BMP compliance in the store. So when you go into a vendor that sells a product, you can look at it and see something that says, if applied correctly, this meets the Nantucket BMP. Just so people are informed consumers when they get into the store. We don't have the ability to say, you can't sell that product, but for something for us to be able to say, this one meets the rules if you use it correctly. Eric, if you want to scroll down to the last one. And then moving into outreach, we kind of hear loud and clear that education is something that we really need to step up on and focus on a bit. And getting stuff into property owners' hands is something that we've always struggled with, the seasonal community and kind of transient community here, to get stuff into their hands and connect them to things that are there can be difficult at times. But really trying to figure out that better. We'd really like to open up a better relationship with UMass and their soil testing lab to help not only homeowners, but the landscapers here, and trying to provide for some additional education. And then also, if we're getting reporting, potentially using UMass or additional third parties to help review those reports that come in and make sure that people are doing the things that they should be doing. And if they're not, we can address those on a one-on-one basis with each company and provide them help and recommendations that necessarily don't come from us, but may come from the actual agronomy experts at UMass to help them out. And in this latest budget that was just approved at town meeting, we have a public outreach position that was really focused on health and natural resources included in that. So that should be able to have an extra set of hands to help develop those materials to get to folks. So to kind of summarize and next steps here, I think with all of this too, we're really focused on, and hopefully everyone will understand is we really want to try to follow good science and good principles with this too, right? We don't want to regulate for the sake of regulation, or to do it is we want to be able to look at the positive impacts that we're having and measure those impacts. So just to kind of step through some things that we're doing and look at is, in this last budget, we've also approved a capital project to reevaluate the Nantucket Harbor Watershed groundwater, and really with the focus on nutrient flows within that groundwater and tracking what the constituents of that groundwater is. So we can try to help out specific areas if it's, wastewater or fertilizer or stormwater, to really dial in management in areas to try to help that. Obviously, we're trying to do yearly eelgrass surveys at this point to manage those and invasive algae species. The Conservation Commission does, but we're also trying to get materials to landscapers and homeowners to encourage using native plants and not necessarily all ornamentals, as they may not require the same fertilizer demands or irrigation demands or those things. And then obviously our regular control of our controllable load things is where we're looking. And then I think with all of our regulations, we could probably do a better job at more regular updates and review, and keeping the conversation more present and not reactive, and trying to stay ahead of where we're going and proactively step to that. So hopefully that's a pretty brief update. I think we're happy to answer any questions that you guys may have.
Yeah, just a couple of things. So first you had it's 18 or 19, you're doing the update that you guys talked about then. That's what you're working on now. And that was the checking the businesses and making sure, that type of thing. That's so how long will that take? What's the process for that? And how long will that take?
So the legwork to that is mostly done, right? So the drafting's been done, KP has reviewed it, so it's ready to go now. I think we had also kind of wanted to wait for town meeting to see what was going to be the resultant of that. But I think more importantly, from our end, we want to be prepared either way. So if it continues at the State House, be prepared that way. But if it does not, to provide a better program here to try to address those concerns. So it's ready. Like Roberto said, the Board of Health will be reviewing it next week. So hopefully we can have it on an agenda to NP and EDC here in pretty short order for whatever their notice requirement is or their hearing schedule is.
Right, so a couple months from now. And if NP and EDC says yes, then does it go to UMass? Is that the follow-up?
Yes, once NPEDC says yes, as long as they vote and do the whole thing, once they say yes, it goes for review at the state level, and I believe they also consult with UMass, but we'll also send it to both.
So if you've consulted with UMass, then it's probably pretty good. That's sort of, sometimes I wonder whether we even needed town meeting, but that's a different thing. Here was a couple of things you said, because I've had a couple different landscapers talk to me over the last couple of weeks, and doing it yearly, they said, was really positive. Getting back to doing the education is really important. A lot of it has lapsed. And then one person was interesting. He said, just charge us all more. so that because he says it's not fair. Some of us worked on this. Some of us did all this work and we're doing it right. And there's a lot of people that aren't. Just charge us all more and go out and enforce, because otherwise we won't be able to fertilize at all. He goes, and so that was just an interesting plea. And so, they're sort of saying some of us are trying to do the right thing and some people aren't. So I think, we have to think about it, so when we're not enforcing and when we're not holding people accountable and we can't go on their property and all these other things, what we're really doing sometimes is hurting the people who are doing it right. And so we have to sort of think of it sometimes and twist it. It's a different way of looking at it, is if we're trying to do the right thing, we should make sure that we're if we're trying to do the right thing, make sure we're rewarding the people who are. And I think sort of just another thought, sometimes enforcement gets a bad name. I think sometimes enforcement should have a positive, we should spin it positively, because it's, you're making it possible for the guys who are doing it right to do it right. And you're giving them a reason to do it. So anyway, those in the yearly thing, I said that, and check for licenses. Yeah. But a lot of the things you're talking about with those guys, would be helpful.
Yeah, we've always tried to keep a positive relationship with them.
Yeah.
Like you said, enforcement sounds harsh. That's one of the main reasons why we've only ever given the one ticket. It was something that was egregious. It was something that was wrong, like clearly wrong. Every other time when we see the fertilizer in the truck or something, we do some education on the spot. And we've always, for both of us, we've always have it out there. It's even on the BMP. If you have any questions, call us. We're a resource. We're not there to just go out there with a hammer.
Yeah, true. But the people who are cutting corners and not doing this, or the people who are, well, if I don't do it, they're going to hire, if I don't put extra on and make it bright green, they're going to hire someone else, like Bobby talked about at town meeting, that, so we got to find a way to get those guys, because otherwise the people who, the people who are doing that are not going to call and go, by the way, I'm thinking of do this, Roberto, but, you can't come on here, right? They're not going to, they know that.
Of course.
Yeah. So anyway, I just think it's.
Yeah, we're really talking about, for all of this, right, is a cultural change in practice here, which is, it's just hard. And I think the last 10 years have been a really good learning curve for everybody. And there have been a lot of successes and a lot of failures, and trying to address those is tricky. And I think when Roberto and I were even talking about it this week, is we have to start to change the narrative from we gotcha and catching people to arming them with the ability to be successful, and then weeding out the ones who are not choosing to comply that way, but finding ways to say, hey, these guys are the good guys. These guys are doing the right things, because there are lots of guys that are, right? And finding ways. And we think that reporting that comes in and is available and people can see it is a really easy way for us to say, these guys that are licensed are doing it the right way, right? They can get their license renewed. They're following all the rules. They're doing a great job. And then we can really start to hone in on the ones that we're having trouble with.
Melissa?
Thanks, Jason. I agree. I really like the yearly, but I also want to shift the narrative. I mean, it's landscapers' responsibility, but ultimately it's homeowners' responsibility. And so that outreach portion that you talked about, I think it would be really great to do something like have some kind of like, welcome to your new home, here's your responsibility, and give that to real estate agents so they can pass it off to people and local attorneys when they go to closings. And any kind of online education, if any of the education you offer can be done in videos. I think we've learned a lot in the past 3 years about how to use those tools. And that just helps people, become more compliant. And then I think the other thing is anything we can do to ease translation, and have those online courses in at least Spanish would be really helpful.
Actually, we've already translated
good.
into Spanish.
Great.
Between Florencia and I, we did all the translations in Spanish, and she did Portuguese.
Oh, good.
So those are already, they're
Excellent. Those are
subtitled.
covered. Yeah.
We're working on dubbing. That's going to be a little harder.
Yeah.
But they are already subtitled. And then the packet is a great idea. My closing agent just happened to be awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stephen. They gave us a packet of these are all the resources on Nantucket, and
Yeah.
it's something that we can definitely come up
Yeah,
with.
and I think just having something that you can remind people, even if it is annually, here's updated fertilizer regulations to share with your clients and homeowners, because it's a joint responsibility, and I understand why enforcement's difficult on the landscaping community, because you can't go on private property. And really shame on those homeowners who say, I don't care what it costs, I'm going to fire you and hire somebody else. And I think most people, if they're empowered with the right information, is there any enforcement we can do on the homeowner? Am I missing that? Or is it just on the applicator?
It's a little harder with the homeowner. We have to catch them in the act.
I got you.
That's where it's a lot easier to do that yearly checkup, that yearly audit.
Okay.
Because a homeowner can still, you can order it online. You can have it delivered straight to your home, and we don't have that as part of the invoicing process.
Yeah.
So it's a lot harder. We can, and if we catch them, once again the word.
Yeah.
If we see it and we can enforce it, we can do it. But it's a lot harder on a homeowner.
Okay.
What we can definitely do, though, is when we enforce or inspect or provide information for the landscaper, we can also send a notice to the homeowner saying, this is what we saw on this property.
Okay. I think that would be really, I want to just make sure outreach and education are going to homeowners also, because I feel like the landscaping community actually probably does majority a great job of staying educated on top of and following the rules. It's bad apples.
Yeah.
There, I had one other thought. I don't remember what it was yet. I'll email you if I don't think of it tonight.
Brooke?
I had just a thought that popped into my head that maybe like if there were a video for homeowners that had a QR code link that they can embed in their invoices.
That's cool. That's a fantastic idea. We'll be in contact.
Okay.
That's an excellent idea.
Thank you, Brooke. Dawn?
Well, I mean, just ultimately, I would just echo that, I mean, it's going to come from the homeowner, what they want people to do for them in terms of services. And if they actually connect, because you're doing this to your lawn, it's doing this to the harbor and the beach and the place that you want to go. And that's why you come to Nantucket. So I just don't know that people have fully made the connection, just like it took years for recycling to really catch on. But ultimately it does have to be personal responsibility to actually make it work.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think educating the homeowners on one of the things that was in, I think that was in here, for the different plants that you can put in that's native and why that's important. And they can be just as pretty or just whatever colors, here's the options. And landscapers have that, but yeah, it has to go back to the homeowner. I had one question. What does, and this is very broad, so what does success look like? Because like in 2 or 3 years, how do you know that we're doing a great job, right? Is it, because it's not just, I mean, if the eelgrass starts to come back, that's good, but there's so many factors with that. So there's got to be multiple.
Yeah, so I think for us, success looks like a couple different things. Obviously for us at Natural Resources, we're putting a lot of time and effort in water quality testing and eelgrass monitoring. I think we'd like to evolve into a little bit of sediment testing in areas too, to look at things. And seeing that change over time and being able to measure that over time and seeing decreases in some of the invasive algae and eelgrass. So I think there's a biological component that goes with it. And I think that speaks to what Dawn was talking about. I think that's the easiest way to connect people to the story of what's going on. But with that too, I think the other part of success that goes with it is, that improved relationship between the landscaping community and the town for the regulations and a good dialogue back and forth, and having a program that people can look at and say, this is running really well. We'd like to evolve it into this and be able to move it forward. So I think, the biological components, easier to sample and look at, but I think having that programmatic look and being able to say, we have way more successes than failures now, and that's building over time, I think is the other real way to see that program's being successful. I know that's a really broad answer to that, but I think that's there. And homeowner buy-in in response to, and I would love to hear the day, because I hear it through the Concom all the time for, my clients ask me to cut this or do this, and I know I can't, or I need to get permits and do that. I would love to hear the day when they can say, our clients have stopped firing us to find someone else that will, or get that number smaller and smaller and smaller. I think that's another really good measure of success, where those guys can have those talks with their clients and have positive responses, not, well, I'm just going to go to the next name in the phone book and keep going till I find someone that I want. Is the response will be consistent, and homeowners will be connected, and then it'll hopefully run smoothly, and then it's just little tweaks and changes as we go.
Well, thank you, Jeff, because I think if we have those things to drive towards, then we know where we're going. Because this is all the stuff that you're doing or have been doing and can be doing more of, and it seems like it's hard to have the metrics, right? How do you measure culture change to where people are self-regulating, right? Where it's like you're shamed by doing XYZ on your lawn. Everyone's kind of like, not cool. How do we know that's working? But
Yeah, that's always the trick with these.
it's the hope, yeah.
But what that's part of that's part of putting it together.
Yeah, the
If you can't
education.
measure it, you can't manage it.
Yeah.
And that's what they do at Zingerman's. They measure every single thing in the bakery and the, et cetera, and it works. So I think that's the key, is what measurements are we following?
And actually, to that exact point, the regulations as written from 2012, there's no point of measurement other than how many tickets have you given. And that's creates an issue.
Yeah, you can make an argument. We gave no tickets out. Everyone's doing the right thing. Or we gave 5 tickets out. That's success too. So it's, yeah.
And you may find that you need to do both.
Yeah.
That you need to give a certain number of tickets every year, but you also may need to find and you need to find that you have to do X amount of other stuff. And that's part of what measuring does. It's part of what that kind of management does, is it places the accountability in there, and you can measure it from year to year, and you have to track everything.
Yes.
And that's it's a lot harder to set that up. You've got to get your staff to do it, which is not easy, because they're used to doing a certain thing. I've done this at my own business. It takes me about a year or two to make a change. They push back, they don't want to do it, and then eventually they go, boy, that really makes it a lot easier. That's 2 years later. So you really, it's hard.
Exactly. And thanks to town meeting last week, we had a position approved for public information. This is one of the things that we're going to be working on, getting this information out to homeowners as well as renters and visitors and everyone really. And it's, and to correct, get everyone on the same page on what it is to read, because one of the things that we did see last week was a laboratory report from UMass was read out loud. But one of the things that's really hard to understand is when you send out your soil sample as a homeowner to UMass and do it directly, they specifically ask you to check a box on what is this for? Are you doing this for gardening, for flowers? Are you doing this for fruits? Are you doing this for agricultural use? Are you doing this just for lawn? And depending on what that check mark is what the report will recommend, whether you're deficient on a specific nutrient or not. So it's really important for the homeowner or the person doing that soil sample to know exactly what it is they're looking for, or else they may accidentally get misinformed. Knowledge is good. Having that knowledge out there is really good. Having the ability to interpret that knowledge is the best answer.
Anybody else?
Not now. Oh.
Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Emily Molden for the Nantucket Land Council. I first just want to thank all of you for having this on the agenda so quickly, and to Jeff and Roberto for coming forward with the presentation. I really appreciate all the discussion and dialogue. I definitely were supportive of moving forward with the proposed amendments to our existing regulations while the home rule petitions are pending up at the state. I think just a couple of additional comments. My understanding is when the original regulations were put into place, that the licensing program that was established was done so as a bridge, so to speak, for a couple of years while there was an opportunity to get things running and to maybe establish a more robust program. And I think it's definitely time to do that, and there's opportunity to, and it sounds like there's some proposed changes to do that. Education and outreach is certainly such a huge component, and I 100% agree with the board about homeowner education being a really major component of that. I know I can say the Land Council is very interested in helping to do some more education with homeowners, with landscapers, whether it's helping to bring experts to the island or facilitate other interactive programming, and would love to do that in conjunction with the town to support the town's program. It also is pretty clear with the proposed amendments as they were presented that there's some more focus there, excuse me, directly on the companies and the businesses themselves, rather on, as far as tracking fertilizer use, rather on the specific applicators that are out in the field. And I think that that's an appropriate way to think about improving some enforcement as well, as far as looking at a way to try and ensure that those companies and businesses that are out there operating commercially and spreading fertilizer are coming through the town program and getting their employees who are out there in the field licensed and educated. And that would be certainly a measure of success, the more companies that can come through the door and get the right information. I also think it's worth noting that the Regulation 75, the way that it's set up, it includes a mechanism to revise the best management practices document itself within that. So there's certainly opportunity to review that document and think about some changes and improvements over time, since that's 10 years old now as well. But then I think I would also love to just take the opportunity, since I wasn't an original member of the Fertilizer Advisory Committee, but there is still this group of stakeholders out there who I know are all really interested and concerned about the program and its function and its future. I'm curious what the select board, and also from Jeff and Roberto's perspective, what the function of that advisory board or advisory committee is sort of now and into the future, as far as being support for the program, and in what capacity we can continue to help to provide that support. So I would maybe leave you with that question, but also just really thank you for the dialogue and discussion. And I think it's great to be able to hear what's going on with the program, preseason, postseason, whenever it seems most appropriate. But I look forward to continuing the dialogue in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Roberto.
Thanks, Anne.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. That was a good discussion.
Thank you guys very much. The next item is to review follow-up with 2022 annual town meeting and election results. So typically I prepare a chart that shows, mostly on the staff level, who is going to do what going forward with every article that was voted in. I have not had a chance to get to that yet. So I wanted to review with you tonight the next steps generally, with actions taken at the May 2nd annual town meeting as well as the election. And so let me just get through this, because I know there's going to be some additional discussion perhaps of some of the specific warrant articles. So financial approvals will be processed in the finance department. General bylaw and zoning amendments. These are compiled by the town clerk and forwarded to the Attorney General's office. We have gotten some questions and commentary coming in about the outcome of Article 71, gender equality at beaches. I have spoken with town council a couple of times about this since town meeting, and there's a lot of speculation out there, I guess I would say, as to what is or isn't going to happen. And basically, until the general bylaw amendment is acted upon by the Attorney General, there's no real action to be taken by the town. The state law remains in place, and the state law essentially neither allows, it doesn't specifically allow, I'm just going to say it like this because I don't know how to say it elsewhere, otherwise, topless women at the beach. It doesn't allow that, but it also doesn't specifically prohibit it. What it prohibits is lewd behavior. So I'm just going to leave it at that for right now. And we've talked about because of these questions and comments that are coming in, should we do a press release? Should we do something on the website? So I think we're going to do a little paragraph on the website. I don't know that a press release really rises to that. So we can talk about that more in a minute if you want to. Article 69, the ban on nip bottles, if approved by the AG's office, will take a significant amount of outreach. That wouldn't go into effect until June 1, 2023, but just FYI. Home rule petitions will be compiled by town admin. We need to get certified copies of all the votes on all of that. So that takes a little time. They're compiled and we will forward them to the town's legislative representatives. Real estate articles will be prioritized and processed within town admin with the real estate specialist and some legal work. Article 101, a real estate article, that was long-term lease authorization for the shooting range. We are convening an internal staff group. I think we're meeting next week. We'll review the proposal that was submitted in response to the RFP, the request for proposals that the town issued about a month ago. And we will be back to you all with recommendations once those are reviewed, and that will be, I'm understanding, a public meeting, the staff meeting, that is. Article 82 was a citizen article seeking an ombudsman for citizens' complaints. That had been flagged by town council early on in December of 2021 and at town meeting as being legally flawed and not legally binding. And some direction from the board may be needed as to how it would intend to address that. There is a legal opinion in your email. The results, so that's just overview of town meeting follow-up. The election follow-up, depending on, all of the questions were approved except for the central municipal facility, which it didn't really matter because that also wasn't approved at town meeting. So at this point, town admin, as we are able to start processing it, will evaluate what needs to be done for every question. There are different things that need to happen, including procurement, project managers, a number of different things. So we're going to be sorting all of that out. And I should just note that with regard to the central municipal facility, obviously that's not proceeding at this time. So maybe that needs a little internal discussion about how to proceed. But in the meantime, we are going to need to seriously beef up our budget for facilities, not just personnel, but operations, maintenance, and capital improvements, because we have a lot of town buildings that don't have anywhere near the maintenance that is needed, nor the staff to get at it. So that's going to be a pretty big budget ask for fiscal 24. And that, I think, is just a general overview. Now, Articles 42 and 43, which were voted to have a work group associated with them. Mr. Iverson is here from the planning board. I think Denise Cronell is on the video here, and we've had a little bit of discussion about how to proceed with that, and I think there's some information in your email on that as well. And I think maybe Denise or somebody was going to take us through a potential path there.
Thank you, Libby. So,
Denise, I'm sorry, it's Melissa.
We're
We're going to
gonna
recuse
step away from
ourselves.
the table.
okay.
Go ahead, Denise.
Okay, thank you, Jason. So Dave, Jason and I spoke at town meeting the night of town meeting as to how to move forward on this. And what we had proposed was that the chairs and the vice chairs of the two boards and one committee could get together, have a first pre-meeting, and then we realized that three of the people, Dawn, Stephen, and John, would have to recuse. So what we would do here, our proposal is really a three-step process. First, there'll be six of us. So myself and someone from Finance Committee, Dave and someone else from Planning, and Jason and someone else from the Select Board will get together and have a pre-meeting where we would put together a framework and for draft for discussion. And that framework would include things, but not be limited to things like objectives, proposed size and composition of the committee, how the members are appointed, key milestones and outcomes, meeting and reporting requirements, public input, and anything else. Then we would convene the 19 members, with the exception of the 3 who have to recuse, or actually be less, but anyway, we would have a meeting of the 3 groups, and then we would, in that meeting, validate the framework as suggested, make changes, add anything to it that we might have missed in our earlier meeting. And then from that framework, we would actually have the way that we will put together this committee, or this work group rather. And so, for example, it's, say one of the principles decided is that anyone who wants to work on this work group should also apply vis-a-vis the same way they do to be on a town board or commission or a committee. And so those are the kinds of things that will be decided in the larger group of the 19 people minus the recused folks. And then from that, the work group would be empowered and then off and running in terms of working. All of these will be public meetings because they're all Libby got a opinion from town council that suggests, because it was done at town meeting, even the group of 6 of us, even though we're not on one separate committee, it has to be, we're under open meeting law. So from the beginning, we'll be very transparent on every step of the process for this. And that's how it would happen. So that's the proposal for right now. Again, small work group, come up with a framework, larger work group, come up with a much, basically bless the framework, make any changes that are necessary, and from that, empower the actual work group. So that's it from my side. Dave or Jason, anything else you want to add?
I really like this, what you outlined there, because the pre-meeting just puts something in place. It's just so we're not starting from scratch with 19 or 16 people, right, in a meeting. So it's something to go off of, and we can change it from there. So I think it makes sense to me. Dave?
No, I 100% agree. Great work, Denise, and I look forward to getting down to it.
Matt?
A couple of comments. I think it could work. I think there's one key is who's going to be the facilitator of this, and how do we make sure when it's appointed that it is representative. We want to make sure that it isn't padded one direction or the other. I don't think it will. I know that's not your intent, but I think either it can't be that way and the perception can't be that way, or we will be back where we are again now. So it has to really, there has to be some thought in that. I think one of the first things would be to share sort of the work that's been done to date. I know that, what are the findings, et cetera. So when this group meets, that work is all available. So when we start to meet, we can identify what are the holes that are, missing. I know the FinCom has done some work, that they should share theirs. The planning department has done work. I think, we've got some stuff from town council. All that should be part of the packet that goes out initially. And then I think the key though is making sure that is consensus driven, that it's not just a vote, that it's sort of, when we did comp plan stuff, we didn't move on until everyone was happy. So we have to find, if we're going to get this thing through town meeting, we've got to find a way to, not to move on until we've got this thing sorted. And I think we have to go in with that mindset, I believe.
Absolutely. Oh, sorry, Jason. I can't see you guys. And the noise in the background it's crazy time for my dog. So that's really the background noise you're about to hear as they're chasing around. Yeah, absolutely, Matt, to your point. One of the important things about the committee is it absolutely has to be representative of all the different constituencies. And at the same time, not be so big that you can't get anything done because there's just too many people in the room and it's harder. And I think being very transparent about available data, everything right from the beginning is going to be important for the public to understand that we are taking this very seriously. We want to do the best thing for the community on all dimensions. And I think that's one of the key things that I know that Jason and Dave and I have talked about. And I'm quite sure with all the talent on the 3 boards, or the 2 boards and the 1 committee, I'm quite sure we can get there. And then empower a work group that will be very representative for the town of Nantucket. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. Matt, when you say facilitator, do you mean the facilitator of these 3 boards, or the facilitator of the work group?
Well, hopefully we don't need it for the boards, but we might. But I think for the work group itself, there was,
like, who's the admin, or who's the leader of the work group?
I'm not exactly sure, but I just, how do you, I'm not sure. I've heard different suggestions, different ideas, but how do you make sure that you have, that person that's driving it with the right intent for everybody and with the right, sort of willingness to look at everything. That's all.
Yeah, Brooke?
So, excuse me, from my point of view, there's so many different constituencies and so many people who come at this question from different personal perspectives that it's not like it's two sides of an issue that you're bringing and you can balance it evenly. It's really a diverse group of people and so my thought is an independent facilitator for the conversation to make sure that everybody is heard, because there are some constituencies maybe that are larger than others that may be louder than others, and just to make sure that all voices are heard in the conversation as it moves forward and maybe that's, literally hiring a professional facilitator to make sure that happens.
Thank you, Brooke. Anything else from Libby or Dave, Denise? I think we'll probably get something on the books for next week, maybe, Denise, but at least that first pre-meeting.
Yeah, if we can, that'd be great. I have a bias to action, so that would be great.
That's very nice.
I always like to meet with Dave and Jason and our other friends, so why not?
It's great, and it'll be transparent, and everybody will be involved. I think this first pre-meeting won't be, a public hearing, right? It'll be us putting everything together structurally to get it ready for that next meeting. Just trying to put that out there now. Erica? No, it's public, but I'm just saying it's not going to be a quote unquote public hearing where we have to take public comment. That's what I meant. Okay, anything else? We move on past 42, 43.
Do you, just on those, do you want to now or, so it sounds like what the suggestion here is that the three chairs plus a member of each of those groups meet?
Yep.
So who will be the other member from you all?
You can do it if you want, either way.
I'm happy to do it.
Okay, so Brooke and I for us.
Okay.
Denise can pick somebody.
It'll be Peter Schaefer.
Okay. Okay. All right, Dave will get back to us. Okay, Dave will let us know tomorrow and then who the second person will be for the planning board.
So just to be clear here then, the idea is to get that group together, the three chairs and one member each from Finance Committee, Select Board, and Planning Board. That group will need to have a posted meeting. We're going to have to locate somebody to take minutes and figure out how they're going to meet. That may need to be a remote situation, virtual. And Denise, I can talk to you tomorrow, I guess, and we can throw out some dates for that. Already we're running into potentially later next week or even the following week because of posting requirements. We'll need an agenda. And so that's just some minor details, but I just want the public to understand what, specifically is going to be happening. And so that group will then develop this framework to propose draft goals, objectives, size of the actual committee or work group or whatever that is going to be working on this.
It would just be a draft, just so.
A draft.
Yes.
And that draft will go back to
The big group.
The 16 members. Yeah,
okay,
the three boards.
So that is going to be a very large meeting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which most likely will be virtual.
Sure.
I would imagine. And okay, I'm just anticipating a bit of need to be very structured with that very large.
That's why Denise is going to run it. It's going to be very structured.
I will run it. I will keep us on target if you all agree. I'm happy to do that. And then otherwise you can vote me off the island. There you go.
Another possibility, does it go back to the various boards for, for comments? And if there are no comments, if everyone's agreeing, there's no reason to have a huge meeting. But if if the comments come back and there's things that need to be sorted, then does that get sorted with everybody in the room, or does that get sorted with 6 people?
Yeah.
I think those are the kind of things you have to think about. You come back to your, respective boards, and and then you get the input.
That would also work.
I'm fine with either way. It'll take a little longer to go back to each board, get their comments, and those 2 representatives come back for a second meeting of I'll just call it the 6th, so we know who we're talking about. But we could do that.
Maybe the initial group can sort through that. I kind of like that idea.
What's going to work
That's-
the best?
Yeah.
We can propose that as part of the framework, in addition to an independent facilitator for the work group, those kinds of things.
Yep.
I think that the path will become a little more apparent as we start to roll up our sleeves. And so, I mean, I'm hoping that we don't have to have 3 boards sitting in a room or sitting in a Zoom and trying to work something out, because I think that'll get complex. But if we need to, we need to. But I think the solutions will become apparent to us as we go down the road.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Denise. Anything else on this for 42, 43? Okay. Thank you on that. Libby, did you have more to go over on the?
I did not have more, unless you all have any questions.
I have a comment on the ombudsman, whatever number that was. Was that
82.
82? All right, I should remember that. That was my graduation year. Their options were no action, we have a town role to mediate, or we do charter changes. And I'm not in favor of a charter change. I don't think that rises to that level. I'm not sure I'm not sure about the no action. I think because we have, I think we should be talking about, is there a town role, or is, from different areas, how would you have someone try to mediate? They wouldn't be able to, according to the town council, it's not like they can force a mediation or can make parties do it, but could you have that, who would have the conversation, and how do you have it? That's that would be, I think, what we would be exploring. I don't think either of the other two. It's either no action and we just ignore it some more, or we, sort of talk at least about, if there's an issue, how do we do that? So.
And I wouldn't use the word ignore. I would just say it was, it was said several times, it was legally flawed and not binding. Even the vote was both of those things. But I think if you do want to have some discussion about that option number 2, which is what Matt was just describing, we should schedule it as an agenda item, specific agenda item, and make sure town council is present.
And sorry, I didn't mean ignore. I meant not do anything, or, we've had situations where we've taken things up. I'm thinking of sort of, that dragged on for a while. I'm thinking of, sort of taking issues, and we didn't deal with it for 4 or 5 years. And then, and then we ended up going to court, and then end up, geez, if we had just sort of dealt with it at the beginning and done it, it would have been cheaper and easier for all involved. So that's all I'm saying. When someone comes with a, sort of a complaint, how do we make sure that it rises to enough of a level and to the right place that if there's a possibility of solving it for all involved, how do we do that? That would be my goal. And that's not to beat up on anybody at all. It's just to say, how do we do that?
Wilson.
Thanks, Jason. I agree about some outreach that needs to be clearer to the community about what avenues currently exist within the structure we have right now, because they do exist. And I think, unfortunately, people just don't often know where to turn to for assistance. So I think that we could have this as an agenda and talk about it and have some ideas. But really, we need to flesh out and make clear for the community, when they reach a level of frustration or feel that they're not being heard, where they can go and how they can be heard. And in some ways, I wrote earlier today to Libby, maybe this is a good role for our DEI director. And I think it's something that was the genesis of the creation of that position. I also just want to be really clear that, the town of Nantucket is not responsible for solving grievances related to the Nantucket public school system. And I think that's got to be really clear in whatever outreach we put out, that they are two separate entities responsible for solving their own issues. And perhaps we can be in touch with our fellow board members or Dr. Hallett about making sure that their path for responses for parents and community members who have issues is clear as well, because clearly it's a community-wide concern. So those were just a couple of my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Melissa. Brooke?
I absolutely agree, Melissa. I echo a lot of your thoughts. Mediation is a process by which people who are at odds come together, and if it's successful, they actually come to an agreement voluntarily. I happen to be trained as a mediator, so I'm a little familiar with it. And I think having maybe that tool available to people, but I think to Melissa's point, sometimes people just don't know where to go to get their questions answered, and even navigating the website or, the complexities of town administration and departments and all of that. And I think the Government 101 initiative that's coming along will help a lot with that. But also sometimes one does run up against a dead end, and having somewhere to go, I think, is useful. And inclusion is in Kamal's job title. So, and being heard is a hallmark of inclusivity. So,
yeah, it's probably about 70% of getting towards some resolution is just being able to openly and honestly communicate about where your frustrations lie.
Even if the answer is, I'm sorry, there's nothing we do, you have to go to court. At least that's, after you've tried everything else, at least you're then clear on what has to happen. I think it's, so. You're a mediator. Is that why they put you between Jason and I?
That's strategically
Good job.
positioned there. I think it's worth an agenda item at a future select board meeting, just because town meeting did pass it. And I think there needs to be a lot of clarity put out there, understanding what does that mean. If you go the charter route, what does that mean? Using examples like the HDC is a charter example, and some things that Melissa said, schools, town, just really clarifying a lot.
Even airport, but if it's at the airport, where do you go?
Yeah.
It's sort of.
So we'll put it on. Let's look at the next couple weeks and next month. Any other articles that you wanted to go over, Libby, or any other board members wanted to discuss?
I know Libby said about Article 71 that they'll put a paragraph or something together, but I do encourage us to help spread the word. In our fractional ownership business, we've heard from several clients who are concerned about what the impacts to their family experience on the beach will be. So I think, unfortunately, the national media attention this has gotten people a little bit confused and concerned that we're going to see a lot of egregious toplessness. So it may not necessarily rise to the level of a press release, but a press release could be helpful to counteract some of the misinformation that's spreading around. And certainly, again, I think getting that information in something digestible that other business owners can use and share and spread in their own platforms is helpful.
Sports radio spent 10 or 15 minutes the other day.
Oh, yeah.
And they talked about Bill Belichick and how we'll have to go topless and blah, blah, blah. It was 10 or 15 minutes of craziness. So they've taken it to a whole another level. And that would be egregious toplessness, but
that would be lewd.
Yes, that could put someone in jail, but.
And I do also like the idea, obviously there's going to need to be some outreach on the NIPS. I will just say I was walking today on Lovers Lane, having just gone through the state forest, and there were pint-size fireball containers all over the road, like several of them. So I think, I don't want to rehash town meeting, but I think we probably at some point have to have a larger conversation about what our message is as a select board and as a town on littering in general. I think we have got a lot of different community. We have members of our community who come from all over the world, and recycling and litter responsibility is handled differently everywhere worldwide. So I think we may need to have some, not just outreach necessarily directed towards NIPS, but some consideration of littering in general. But we've been dealing with the pandemic. I know all the things.
No, I'm okay. You opened up a pet peeve over here. We have had a lot of discussion I've got a summer issues team that we meet about once a month, and has somebody from the chamber on it, and a number of town departments that are involved in summer events, issues, and things like that. And one of the things on my to-do list is get a memo out, or a correspondence of some kind, to businesses to implore that they help pick up litter this summer. The town is not going to be able to get around everywhere. The businesses in the lower Broad Street area, for example, have got to step up with picking up. And we don't want to see overflowing trash cans at 6 o'clock in the morning. And that is a common problem in the summer. Seagulls are a problem, I agree. And there are some businesses that are really excellent at cleaning up after they close at night, but not everybody. Businesses out of town, all businesses should be going up and down their streets as regularly as possible and just picking up the trash. I could probably go on for hours about this, but correspondence is coming.
But just know, Libby, that my daughter and I will take care of the duck pond and the bike path there. Nobody has to work on
at
that.
5 a.m.
Yeah. Dawn?
One thing that really concerned me at town meeting in regard to the NIPS was the continued commentary of you can buy them in glass, which just seems, I understand the idea is to get rid of plastic, but do we want glass littered all over the island? It seems like the businesses are just going to shift to all glass nip bottles, and we're still going to have the same similar
Litter
issue.
problem.
Yeah, there's
Yes.
two different issues. One, the single-use plastic, and then two, littering. And I think that was exactly the genesis
Glass
of
makes me nervous.
Yeah, no, and you're terrified of your dogs walking, humans walking, but I think that's exactly the genesis of my suggestion, that at some point, I think this board has to recommend, tackle some kind of approach to littering. Do we partner with the schools? Do we talk about littering, anti-littering campaigns? I don't know what the answer is, but I would say that I get a lot of correspondence from constituents concerned about not just single-use plastics, but litter in general. And it's a huge problem.
Okay, I'm gonna say more about that. It is a huge problem, and I cannot overemphasize this. People have got to take personal responsibility.
They sure do.
When you see blue masks dotting the moors and things like that, that is total carelessness and irresponsibility.
Yeah. My favorite is the dog poop bags that are just left, not thrown away. But
So I've got two things. I met Libby, must have been 15, 20 years ago, when I think your son was 4 years old, at a clean team. Didn't even know who you were, what you did, but I remember I met you at clean team. That's where that's coming from. She's been doing clean team for decades. One other perspective that I did not think of, it just shows you the complexity of bigger articles or bylaws like this, that all the little things that comes with it. So someone reached out to me who's for this and is anti-litter. They said they are a substance misuse kind of recovery coach for 20 years. And they said one thing most people wouldn't think about is the NIPS. I use them, a lot of us use them to scale people down in their drinking when they're trying to go sober. And the NIPS are actually helpful, because if you don't have the NIPS, then they can stay with a larger amount. That's not a reason to not get rid of the NIPS, but just something that shows the complexity of making moves like this, which I hadn't really thought of.
Yeah, there's a lot of unintended consequences, I think.
You know, it's my favorite. We talk about plastic and then everything we've replaced it with, a lot of it's worse. You know, we think we're doing the right thing, which is why I hope that it gets dealt with when we do the landfill and what is going to be able to handle PFAS and plastics and et cetera. What's the right vision, you know, long-term going forward? Because, you know, sort of we've got boxed water, which has got plastic and metal and PFAS. It's got the whole trifecta and there's no one that can undo it, but that's allowed, you know, and we're putting, and people are doing different types of plastic. I can go on for this for hours, but so there's a, you know, there's 9 different biodegradable bags. Only one of them really is any good, you know, supposedly. And so we're asking for one thing, but we don't even know what we're asking for. And then we think we're doing the right thing and we're really not. And so, you know, and so hopefully we'll get that sorted when we figure out the landfill. And we say, okay, here's how we're going to do it. And this is where we're heading. And here's why this will work. Because some of this stuff is not going away. Plastic is not going away in the next 10, 20 years, you know, 30 years. And the dumps, we're working on a 10 or 20 year thing for the dump. Well, it better be able to handle plastic, you know, and we better, so that's sort of, you know, that's my hope, as opposed to some, and I think people are trying to do the right thing by bringing these citizen articles, but I'm not sure that the whole picture is understood yet, so.
If I could, because I think it's appropriate for this agenda item, how did everybody feel about town meeting?
Well, first, I want to say thank you to the town clerk's office and all the volunteers. I think the addition of the gym, the electronic voting, the ease of check-in, everything went really well. And, you know, there's the continued debate of, is it better to have a spring Saturday and that's 8 to 9 hours long, or is it better to do a spring 2 nights starting at 5 o'clock? And, you know, we're always disenfranchising somebody. Somebody cannot participate no matter what day or time we choose. So I actually think that starting the town government study committee again, reconstituting that sooner rather than later with the express purpose of looking only at our form of government is critical at this point. And I also think that it would benefit from having some kind of facilitation or staff liaison helping to lead that, because it can't take another 5 or 6 years to have a recommendation, in my mind. I think it needs to move a little bit more clearly. They did a lot of really good, great groundwork in the last iteration. So to build on that, I think would be really important. I thought that the sound was phenomenal. I thought for the first time in years, we could really hear people. So all the infrastructure elements of how it went, I thought went very well.
Yeah, I'm also really continue to be very pleased with the electronic voting. It's just, it's quicker and it's, you know, the data is perfect. And it was really nice how people could vote from the gym and just how everything went with that. I do think, I thought it was effective to start at 5 o'clock timing wise. I think that the eating piece of it for people is difficult. And I wonder if we could look into something like having someone host some kind of a concession where people could get snacks at least. Someone might really like to do that and just have a place where people could eat kind of out in the lobby, not in the auditorium. Because people are in and out to go to the bathroom. I mean, the meetings are really long, or there's something that they don't care to listen to, or can step out for a few minutes. So just something to think about for the future. I still kind of like Saturdays myself, starting early in the morning, but I'm fine either way. It depends on how the calendar works out. Overall, I mean, I think that things were generally civil. We had a few little issues. And I was really pleased that all but one of the spending articles that we put forth passed. That wasn't even expected to me, that so much would go through and have such broad support. Particularly the support of the Island Home was overwhelming.
It was remarkable.
And that was just really phenomenal, because I've been working on that since 2015, and others before me. And then let's see, I thought generally we had, obviously we lost people throughout, but even up until the end, we had a decent amount of people in that room. So I think how we ordered the articles worked out well. And I guess that's it for me.
Thank you.
I stand corrected on the voting. I was hesitant about it, and I was wrong. I think it's better than, I used to like that you have to put your hand up and you have that accountability, but I think that as far as just the ease of it and the speed is far outweighs it. And so and people will stand up and and have their say, and where people stand mostly anyway. So I think that and the rest of it, I agree with almost everything you guys have all said.
The only feedback I unfortunately had to observe from home, which was a huge disappointment personally. However, the only feedback I got was there was some confusion about being able to speak from the gym. At some point, people felt that they were not allowed to move from the gym into the main auditorium to speak on the articles. And there was a bit of a delay in the sound in the gym, and that was disconcerting to some folks that I've talked to. I think the speaking part got sorted out, but not until some people were left feeling like their voices were not heard when they wanted to speak. But overall, I don't know how we deal with that. It's a great thing that lots of people came. And so just making sure that secondary experience isn't secondary from the other room is going to be really sort of the next level. I know a lot of people who loved being outdoors, and I've explained to them a million times that that's logistically a nightmare, and it will never happen again.
And we'll never get such good weather.
Right.
Never say never.
Right.
We put it in the budget. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, you go ahead.
No, anyway, that was it. It was just that. I just appreciate the process, though I do think we need to rethink it. A lot of people are not able to participate. They literally cannot at this time of year, either on a Saturday or an evening, be able to commit the time to come. So I worry about that.
I think that's where sort of a representative democracy may give them representation. If you're doing it by neighborhood, neighborhoods, then those, they can go to the representatives and make their voice known. So, and I love our town meeting. I don't think I'd want to change that either because I'm old, but, for you young folk, that might be where you head up,
There were a lot of great suggestions that came from, like a lot of variety of choices that came out of the town government study committee. And I don't think that we could pick a path yet, but I think that's, my hope would be to reconvene and really focus that down and get some community buy-in on the different choices and make a recommendation about what is going to work better. I love town meeting also, and I know that the people who love town meeting who can't come, and that's disappointing to feel like you can't voice your opinion on something. Jason, could I just add two things I thought of?
Go on.
Thanks. I mentioned this to Libby already, but there were some questions about translation of the warrants and having different copies available in different languages. And so I know that's being worked on. And just, I think, a reminder for folks who may need who have hearing loss and who may benefit from having a person signing during town meeting. That is a service we can provide, but it has to be requested ahead of time. So we talked about, just making sure that people with disabilities or the community knows that those options are available to anybody who needs them, and just doing a little bit of a better job communicating that.
Thank you. I had a couple things. First, food trucks would be great, especially if it's a Saturday, right? Just to line up as many food trucks people could pay or not, or however we wanted to do it. That could be really helpful, even on nights. So there's that. It's at a time where they're maybe not all being used. You could do that. Childcare is always the problem. I remember Catherine Stover telling me, "Look, Jason, I've tried it like 6 different ways. I've tried this. No one really shows up. It's hard just to give your 2-year-old to somebody you don't know, and it's difficult." But a business owner had a pretty good idea. They reached out to me a week before and said, "Look, I've got 3 or 4 staff that aren't voters that I will pay to go to the Boys and Girls Club or wherever we could find a place for childcare." And one of the questions was, is there a way to move certain articles that people are going there for, whether it's 42, 43, or what are the most hotly contested in the beginning, so everybody can kind of consolidate their childcare and come up with ideas like the Boys and Girls Club. It's just an example, right? Because it's right there. You could drop your kids off. And so it was the kind of the week before. It was a great idea and a great offer, but it just needed maybe more time. So that's something that we could try to be more creative about with childcare. Maybe you can't get the 2-year-olds, but maybe you can with maybe a little older. That's Boys and Girls Club. That makes sense. So that was one thought that we'd have to kind of start now or soon thinking about. But I think the town could subsidize that some way. I don't think it'd be a lot of money.
That might work really well for a daytime town meeting, but I
Yep.
think when you have a town meeting that goes till 10 o'clock at night, there's concerns for parents not wanting to have their kids
Yeah, well,
out that late.
yeah, I don't want to get into too granular, but it could be till 7:30, so somebody could go for 2.5 hours. Some version of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I had a thought about subsidizing the childcare that people are already using. In other words, so that their children are staying with caregivers they're familiar with. So whether that's extending hours at existing preschools or childcare programs for the first number of hours of, I don't know, that was a thought I had, that not being left with someone unfamiliar, but using
Right.
the folks who are already
Yep.
providing childcare on Nantucket.
Yep. This is a kind of a funny one, but I've said this to you before, Matt. I think the select board vote should be displayed up high, even with electronic voting. It's your elected officials, you should know what they're voting. And then the call to question is such a tough thing. It's part of the Roberts rules, but everyone says, because I'm an opponent to moving into a different form of town meeting. I've said that since the day I got here 5 years ago in the select board position and before. Everybody can talk. Everybody can be heard at this town meeting. And you can't do that at a mayor or council forum. That's not true, because someone calls the question and it's over. You could have been sitting there for a long time. So not everybody can be heard. Now, if the group wants to knock it down and make sure everybody's heard, there's no one standing there. That doesn't usually happen. I've never seen a call question that didn't. I'm sure it happens every once in a while. So that's some of my frustrations, that it's not as inclusive as we think it is. It's a good version of it. Everybody has kind of a chance to get up and talk and sway it one way or the other.
Sarah did kind of direct the group to not call one too early this time. And I think she's reading the audience, and she's seeing if everyone's really ready, she's more likely to let you do it. And if she isn't, she kind of makes a joke and sways you. It's sort of,
And she
so-
reminded us also that we have the authority to not move that question forward. We can deny that. And so I think being reminded that we might have to pause and take this vote, that's however that makes people feel. But if we feel like there needs to be more debate, we can require that.
Brooke?
The other feedback that just popped into my head was, when there are multiple amendments, I know it got late and we all got tired. I think at some point in time, for people who are fairly new to town meeting, they didn't really understand when we were working. I described it to someone as a tree. You start with the trunk, it's the original motion, and then there's an amendment and it's a branch, and then there's another amendment, it's a branch off the branch. And when you climb a tree and you get out so far, you have to come back each branch to get back to the trunk. And I think people got lost as to what they were actually voting on when we got into those multiple amendments. And, I don't know how much latitude Sarah has as moderator to actually state what a yes or no vote means on each individual amendment as you work your way back, but that got a little bit lost on a couple of those complicated ones.
Yeah, I thought she did a good job of it, but I think she did explain it a lot. But even then, I was lucky to sit next to John Giorgio, so I can say, "Wait, where are we? What is this for?" So I was lucky a couple times.
If you don't pay attention for even a minute, sometimes you can get off track, like a record skipping or something.
So overall, good town meeting.
Yeah, great job.
Yeah, and I think somebody over here said that even maybe it was you, Don, at the very end, there were still 450, 500 people. And usually it's down to 200 the last couple articles. So, any other thoughts on this? Any articles?
I think they were waiting for the, what do you call it, the hunting association. If so the ordering of the articles had a lot to do with that group staying. If that had gone earlier, we would have been down to 200. So
That's what I think was good about the choice of how to order them.
Yeah.
That spread throughout things that are going to be really cared about. Really bring in people.
Yeah, and it also lets people come and go if they need to, right? Like, so. But yeah, I thought it was very good.
Okay, anything else for you, Libby, on this? Okay, select board reports, comments, any committee reports?
Not since last week.
Speaking of committees, next week, I think we'll decide on who's doing what on committees and work groups and all that. Erica?
Just so you know, I worked on your representative little spreadsheet today. Libby gave me 2 updates that I need to do, and I will be sending that out to everyone via email so you can start putting down what you're interested in.
Okay, so we can do that next week.
And then you'll do your county on the 25th.
Okay. I always try to remember to say what's coming up next week. We have NERDA to start off with. And then in our select board meeting, we've got a lot of public hearings. 14 from liquor licenses to POPs to the taxi regulations.
Commercial landfill fees.
Yeah, so it's going to be just bring your popcorn.
Did you
Is there
say
gonna be a
public?
food truck?
There's
Just kidding. I might not.
well, there is a food truck
I
on
might
there.
not be here, so
Yeah.
you might be short next week.
What's that?
I may not be here and unable to zoom in, so you might be
Okay.
short next week.
Okay. Libby, you going to say something?
No.
NRTA next week?
Yeah,
Will we have ridership numbers?
I do not think so.
Well, then give me a few more minutes at the beginning of next meeting then. So it may go a little longer.
I'm just looking at, Libby and I did talk about the government study committee to getting that going on exactly that, just the one issue, not, looking at the charter. They did that. That was all done.
And Jason, I'm sorry, just one last comment on that. I think there are options besides going to just a representative form of government in some areas where we can improve a town meeting experience. And so we just need to get clear on what legally those options are.
Yep.
I think you hear from a lot of people like, well, if you can Zoom a select board meeting, why can't we vote and there are state laws that prohibit certain things, but it'd be really nice to just get clear on what we can and can't do under each one and have that public conversation and see from that where we can improve this process.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Would you like me to make it?
Sure.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.
It's nice to sit like in